One day the breath will cease. The heart will no longer beat its sacred drum. The body, once animated by your thoughts, your dreams, your longings, will lie still. Others will say, "He has died. She is gone." But beloved soul, I tell you with all the light of my realization, you will not be gone. You cannot die. You never were this body to begin with. What you truly are is untouched by fire, wind, time, or decay. The body is the garment. The soul is the light that wore it. And when the garment is laid down, the light returns, unextinguished, unbroken, and fully alive in God. This truth is so simple, yet so few live it. Most go through life believing they are this skin, this voice, this name. But in deep meditation, in God communion, in samadhi, I have left this body many times. I have soared through the astral heavens, touched the causal brilliance, and I have seen firsthand that death is not destruction, it is transition. And what a tragedy it is to wait until the final breath to wonder what lies beyond. For beyond lies not darkness, but awakening. Beyond lies not silence, but the music of the spheres. Beyond lies not fear, but the realization that you were never separate from the source that called you into being. You see, the real shock is not that death comes. The real shock is the moment when the soul leaves the body and realizes, I am still here. The mind may try to define death with science, with philosophy, with doctrine. But death in its truest form is a return. It is the soul stepping through a curtain only to discover that the stage it thought was real was only a shadow play. And the curtain that seemed to separate life and death, once passed through, reveals a greater life, luminous and infinite. Those who fear death do so because they have not remembered who they are. They fear losing what they never truly owned. They grieve the collapse of what was always impermanent. But the yogi learns to die daily. Each meditation, each surrender of ego, each renunciation of desire is a rehearsal for the final letting go. And when the moment of passing comes, the true yogi smiles. He lifts his eyes to the light. He breathes out the last breath not in fear, but in devotion. And he rises. You too must awaken from this dream. Begin now to see yourself not as the body that ages, but as the eternal flame within it. Close your eyes even now and repeat this sacred affirmation. I am not this body. I am not this mind. I am the immortal soul sent by God. Say it again. Say it until your cells tremble. Say it until the soul begins to stir behind your ribs. You were never born to die. You were born to remember. And death, so misunderstood, is the sacred moment where remembrance becomes reality. When the final breath leaves the body, when the senses no longer reach outward, when the world falls away like a dream upon waking, that is not the end. That is the beginning. It is the soul's return to its eternal origin. What you call death, I have seen clearly through the eye of Kriya. It is the soul's first moment of full recognition after a long sleep of earthly delusion. In that instant, stripped of flesh and personality, the soul knows once again, I am not of this world. I came from the light. I return to the light. As the body lies still, the soul rises, gently, without confusion if it is prepared, or with sorrow and clinging if it is not. For those who have meditated, who have lived in God's remembrance, the transition is effortless. Like a swan gliding from one lake to the next, the soul lifts from the spinal center, through the medulla, and passes into the astral world, a realm more vibrant, more harmonious, more real than this one. There the forms are made of light. The thoughts move faster than words. The desires take shape instantly, for it is a world governed not by matter, but by vibration. In this higher world, the soul is met, not by angels of wrath or judgment, but by loved ones, guides, and radiant presences who vibrate on similar frequencies. Some are familiar. Some you will remember from other incarnations. Some may be your own higher aspects. There is no punishment in God's creation, only vibration meeting vibration, truth meeting truth, soul recognizing soul. Imagine it. After decades in a heavy body, bound by gravity and flesh, the soul floats weightless in a robe of light. You move not with feet, but with thought. You speak not with voice, but with pure knowing. There is no aging, no pain, only a shimmering awareness woven with divine memory. If you have loved truly in this life, you will feel that love intensified. If you have served selflessly, that joy will envelop you like golden breath. But if you have lived in fear, in selfishness, in separation, then the soul feels distance, a fog, a yearning for clarity. Even there is no hell, only degrees of proximity to the divine light. Beloved, you were never meant to dwell here forever. Earth is your schoolroom, your test. But the soul's true homeland is not this dust. It is the astral garden, the heavenly realm spoken of in every sacred tradition. And when you die, the journey truly begins, not toward oblivion, but toward the unveiling of God. Repeat this now in your heart. I will not fear death, for it brings me home. I came from the light, and to the light I return. Let these words echo in your inner temple. The moment of death is not a defeat. It is the soul's return to the greater life. When the soul begins its exit from the body, what truly unravels is not life, but illusion. Death unmasks Maya. It strips away the false identities, the veils of personality, the roles we clung to in this brief performance called earthly life. For years, the ego insisted, this is who I am. I am this profession, this name, this face, this pain, this desire. But as the breath falters and the senses dissolve, none of these illusions can follow. The soul is forced to face itself, not as a character in a drama, but as a being of pure vibration, clothed only in its karma and consciousness. The process begins gently for some, violently for others, but always with precision. First, the earth element within the body begins to withdraw. The bones, the flesh, the weight of the body begins to loosen its hold. Then the water element, the fluids and circulations, recedes. The fire, the inner heat, dims. The air, the breath, shortens. Finally, the ether, the field of space and awareness, begins to collapse. The senses shut down one by one. First smell, then taste, then sight. Last to go is hearing, and in that sacred silence the soul is offered a final opportunity to remember, to surrender, to ascend. If the soul is trained, if it has meditated, prayed, served, surrendered, it will rise with peace. It will lift through the spine like a luminous breath. But if the soul is bound to the world, if it clings to unfinished desires, if it fears what is beyond, it may hover, it may struggle, it may experience confusion. And so the great yogis prepared for this moment all their lives. For them, death was not a surprise. It was a liberation, a final exhale into God. But more than the physical, it is the unmasking of the ego that defines death. You see, while alive, the ego wore 1,000 masks. It claimed your thoughts. It painted fears as truths. It made you believe that your worth was in your possessions, your relationships, your control. But at death, all masks are torn away. There, only truth remains. You are faced not with judgment from outside, but with the mirror of your own vibration. What did you love? What did you fear? What did you offer? What did you withhold? All these appear as impressions in the soul's subtle sheath. Some souls experience flashes of memory, their entire life reviewed in a breath, not to shame, but to awaken, to give clarity. Others experience a profound stillness, as if God is asking, now that you are no longer pretending, who are you really? And in that question lies either liberation or the longing that draws the soul back to rebirth. Say this now. I am not my roles. I am not my memories. I am not my fears. I am the witness. I am the soul. I am the light behind all appearances. Maya cannot follow you past the threshold. Only your essence continues. And that essence was always divine. Now that the body has been shed, now that the illusions of ego have dissolved, the question arises, where does the soul go? This is not determined by belief, ritual, or words spoken by others. It is determined by vibration. Just as a bird cannot fly to heights its wings are not trained for, The soul cannot ascend beyond the frequency it has cultivated in life. Where the soul goes after death is not a matter of judgment. It is a matter of alignment. You rise where you belong. The law is simple, sacred, and exact. Like attracts like. The soul is drawn to the realm whose vibration matches its own. If the soul has cultivated selfishness, fear, or indulgence, it is drawn to heavier astral zones, dense, shadowed, but never eternal. If it has grown in love, purity, surrender, and God remembrance, it lifts swiftly into luminous regions, into peace, into radiant communion. These are not punishments or rewards, they are the magnetism of spiritual law. There are three primary destinations after death, each more subtle than the last. The physical realm, earth, where the soul returns through reincarnation due to unfinished desires, attachments, or karma. The astral world, a realm of light and thought, where the soul rests, reflects, and may remain for hundreds of years in peace or subtle longing. The causal world, the highest plane beneath full liberation, where the soul is almost completely merged with divine consciousness, free from individuality, existing in blissful ideation. If the soul still desires experiences, if it still clings to forms, however beautiful, it must return to earth. If it yearns only for God, if all other desires have been purified through love and wisdom, then it may rise to the higher astral or causal heavens, and eventually beyond all form into union with spirit. But most souls, even well-meaning ones, are still bound to earthly dreams. They sleep in the astral until the law of karma, like a divine clock, draws them back into incarnation. They choose parents, geography, circumstances, not randomly, but by karmic resonance. Their soul knows what must be learned next, what must be paid, what must be purified, and so they return, not as punishment, but as opportunity. But the great ones, the saints, the yogis, the God-lovers, they do not return. Having dissolved all attachments, they ascend into the light. I have spoken with such beings. I have seen my own guru, Sri Yukteswar, appear to me in full astral form, glowing like the sun, his voice a current of divine bliss. He confirmed that those who love God above all do not wander. They rise. Say this now. My soul is not bound. My path is clear. My destination is God. May I cultivate now the vibration I wish to rise to later. Your future after death is not sealed by fate. It is shaped by your devotion today. What the world calls the afterlife, the soul knows as the astral world, a realm not of dense matter, but of radiant light and vibrating intelligence. I have seen this world. I have conversed with those who live there, and I tell you now it is not a fantasy, nor is it a place imagined in grief. It is more real than this shadow we call earth. For what we call solid is but frozen energy, but what we call the astral is living light, conscious form, thought clothed in beauty. When the soul enters the astral, it is greeted by surroundings that match its vibration. Some arrive in peaceful gardens of celestial color, beyond the palette of any earthly artist. The trees shimmer with awareness. The rivers hum a music no instrument can play. The sky breathes peace and the very air pulses with divine remembrance. Souls move with thought, communicate with feeling, and live without hunger, sleep, or time-bound decay. It is the world your soul has always dimly remembered in dreams. There you do not wear the heavy body. You wear the astral body, a sheath of light shaped by your spiritual evolution. You may appear youthful, glowing, clothed in inner radiance. Those you have loved, if they too reside there, will greet you not as aged forms, but as their true selves, made beautiful by devotion. You may live in homes of light, attend temples of knowledge, meet guides who teach you with soundless wisdom. Every soul is given what it needs to awaken further. But even this world is not the final home. It is a resting place, a school, a sanctuary for reflection. For even there, the soul must choose to cling or to ascend. Some souls become attached even to this beauty and delay their liberation. Others, seeing through even the astral delight, long only for the infinite. And they rise again, shedding even the astral form, until only consciousness without form remains. In the astral, there are also zones of lower vibration, dim, dreamlike regions where confused or selfish souls reside, not as punishment, but by the law of attraction. These areas are not hell, but temporary hospitals for wounded egos. Eventually, the soul is drawn upward. No one is ever eternally lost. Some astral dwellers assist earthbound souls. These are the guides, the watchers, the unseen hands that nudge you in dreams or during meditation. Their bodies are invisible to the material eye, but sensitive ones may feel them as presence, scent, warmth, or light. I have seen my guru in the astral, Sri Yukteswar, who appeared to me after death with great radiance. He explained the astral mechanics, the journey of souls, and the causal light beyond. I write of it in my book not to impress, but to awaken your memory. Say now, the world beyond is not fantasy, it is home. I will live now in a way that prepares me to dwell in the astral light. Your soul is not walking toward death, it is walking toward a higher life. And yet for most souls, the journey beyond death is not the final ascent. The astral sojourn, no matter how beautiful, is only a pause. The soul must return, not because it is condemned, but because it is unfinished. There are karmas to complete, lessons to master, attachments to burn away in the fire of experience. This is why you return. This is why you are here now, not as punishment, but as pilgrimage. You see, each life is not isolated. It is part of a great river, flowing through many lands. The soul chooses, or is drawn to, a new incarnation based on the exact vibration of its unresolved tendencies. It is not blind. It is not random. You do not come into this world without meaning. You are drawn to parents, geography, language, and time like iron filings, to a magnet, all of it orchestrated by the unerring law of karma. What you have done, you must balance. What you have withheld, you must give. What you have feared, you must transcend. Each return is a sacred opportunity to get closer to God union. Some souls stay longer in the astral, some return swiftly, some are given glimpses of their past errors, their missed awakenings, and they long to come back and correct them. And so the wheel turns. And the yogis, seeing this great drama of return, yearn not for repetition, but for release. They do not fear reincarnation, but they seek to transcend it. For they know, no joy, however divine on earth or astral, compares to the bliss of final merging with the infinite. And yet, even in return, there is grace. For souls travel in groups, bound by shared karma and soul ties. Your loved ones, your enemies, your spiritual friends. These threads weave through lives. You may feel drawn to someone without reason. You may fear someone without cause. You may weep upon meeting a stranger. These are echoes. These are hints. The soul recognizes what the mind cannot remember. Say now, if I return, may it be only to serve. If I must walk again upon the earth, let it be with God in my heart. You have come before. You may come again. But the more you awaken now, the less you must return. And the sooner you shall be free. There is a secret whispered through the sacred halls of yogic wisdom, a truth known to saints and mystics across all ages. Your last thought determines your next beginning. Just as the compass of your final breath points, so shall your soul travel. This is no mere poetic idea. It is a law, subtle and exact. The final vibration of the conscious mind becomes the first imprint in the next world. That is why the yogi spends every day preparing, not for success, not for status, but for the moment of death. To die consciously is not to die without pain. It is to die without fear. It is to keep the gaze of the mind lifted toward the eye of spirit. It is to offer the final breath with the same reverence as the first mantra of meditation. To die consciously is to remember, at the very last, that you are the soul. Most people die as they have lived, scattered, frightened, reactive. But you, beloved one, can live with such devotion that even death bows to your remembrance. If you train the mind daily to return to God, then in that final moment, the habit will hold you. The name of the divine will be on your lips. The light of the spiritual eye will draw your gaze. and as the senses dim, you will rise. Practice now every night before sleep the art of conscious departure. Sit in silence, breathe slowly. Offer all burdens, all regrets, all attachments into the hands of the infinite. Then say, I am thine, be thou mine. Let that be your final prayer each day. Let that be your final breath in this life. For those who pass with God in their mind do not wander, they ascend. And for those who are still learning, still returning, every death becomes a stepping stone toward eternal life. Say now within, I will live in such a way that my death is an offering, not a loss. I will remember the divine when it matters most, because I remember him now. Do not fear the end. Prepare for it with devotion, and when it comes, you will not be carried away by fear, but lifted by light. Beloved, if you wish to rise beyond the veil of death, if you long to escape the wheel of returning birth and passing form, then the time to prepare is now. Not at the hour of death, when the senses falter. Not at the last moment, when breath is shallow and the mind is clouded by pain. No. Now, while your eyes are open and your body moves freely. Now, while the flame of longing still burns in your heart. This moment is your most sacred opportunity. You must not waste it. Every day you live without God remembrance is a day closer to a confused death. Every day you meditate, serve, love, and surrender is a day that polishes the mirror of the soul. Do not say, I will seek God when I am old. Say instead, I will live today as though death were near, not in fear, but in holy urgency. Each act of kindness lightens your karma. Each breath offered in prayer purifies your mind. Each moment spent in stillness thins the veil between you and the infinite. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to renounce the world. You need only begin, faithfully, sincerely, and daily. Meditate each morning. Offer your actions to the divine. Speak lovingly. Serve without expectation. And at night, withdraw into the sacred cave of the heart, repeating the name of God like a rope tying you to eternity. And above all, train your mind to return to the spiritual eye, the seat of divine vision. There, in that holy center, the soul remembers. There, at the time of death, you will see the light that leads you home. But you must practice now so that when the moment comes, the soul flies upward without fear. Say this now, I will prepare each day for my return to God. I will not wait for the end to seek the beginning. I will live in such a way that I die consciously and rise joyfully. Do not fear death, dear one. Forgetfulness is the only death, and every moment of remembrance is a step closer to union. And now, beloved soul, I offer you this blessing, not from the voice of theory, but from the stillness of experience. I have crossed the threshold of death and returned to speak of it. I have seen the soul rise like a phoenix from the ashes of form. I have watched the body fall silent and the spirit rise singing. I do not tell you these truths to impress you. I tell you so that you may remember who you are before the last moment comes. Let death not be your enemy, but your teacher. Let it walk beside you, not as a shadow, but as a mirror. When you see it clearly, you will no longer live for trivial things. You will no longer waste your breath on what fades. You will pour your time, your love, your yearning into what endures. For the soul was not made to seek comfort. It was made to seek communion. Do not wait until the body begins to fail. Begin now. Let each sunrise remind you, I am closer to my return. Let each breath be an offering. Let each word be weighed not in applause, but in alignment. You are not a victim of fate. You are a child of the infinite, sent to remember the way home. And when that moment comes, you will not fall into darkness. You will rise into light. Let this be your mantra. I do not fear the end, for I live in the eternal. I do not grieve death, for I have met the one who waits beyond it. I do not seek to escape life, but to awaken in it so fully that even death bows to me. And now, as this sacred offering ends, I ask you to declare this truth, not just to yourself, but as a vibration to the universe. Write in the space below, I am the soul, and I will not fear death. Let this be your vow. Let it be your blessing to others. Let it become the magnet that draws you to God in this life, in the next, and beyond. You are not the dust that falls. You are the light that rises. You are not the breath that ends. You are the immortal spirit sent to awaken again and again until only God remains. May you live with that remembrance. May you die with that peace. May you awaken fully here and beyond. Peace be unto your soul forever. There are moments in life when we touch the sacred. Perhaps you have felt it in the stillness of early morning, when the sun has not yet risen and the air feels alive with possibility. Perhaps you have touched it in the soft closing of your eyes during meditation, when your breath slows and you sense something vast and loving just beyond thought. But too often, as the day unfolds, that connection fades. The mind, pulled into the noise of errands, conversations, and obligations, slips away from the sweetness it knew only hours before. We begin to believe that spiritual connection is reserved for special times and special places, a quiet corner in our home, a retreat in nature, a temple visit, or the formal minutes we set aside to pray. And in believing this, we unknowingly limit our relationship with God to fragments of our day, leaving the rest of our hours feeling ordinary, even disconnected. Paramahansa Yogananda reminded us of a profound truth. God is not distant when you are doing the dishes. The divine is not absent when you walk through a crowded street or sit at your desk at work. The presence of God does not vanish when you are caught in traffic or speaking with a friend. The sacred is here, always here, but our awareness drifts. The ancient saints knew this and practiced what they called constant remembrance. They wove God's name into every thought, every breath, every heartbeat. They understood that the difference between a spiritual moment and an ordinary one is not in the outer activity, but in the inner awareness. And here is the secret of truth so simple it can be overlooked. You can carry the vibration of the divine with you into every moment by silently chanting a sacred mantra in your mind. This is not the loud chanting of a congregation, nor the rhythmic repetition you may practice during meditation. This is quieter than a whisper, so soft that no one but God hears it. It is a private flame in the altar of your heart. You can do it as you walk, as you cook, as you speak, as you rest. And in doing so, you transform every place into a temple, every moment into a prayer, every action into worship. Think of it like a golden thread that runs through the tapestry of your day. Without that thread, the fabric of your life is just a patchwork of events, disconnected, ordinary, even frayed at the edges. But when you weave that golden thread of silent chanting through each moment, suddenly the entire tapestry shines with a hidden unity. The shopping trip becomes sacred. The train ride becomes meditation. The moment of pause between conversations becomes communion with the infinite. And the most beautiful part is this: no one around you even needs to know. The world sees you going about your life as usual, but within, your soul is bowing, singing, worshiping, and basking in the light of God's presence. So if you have ever wondered how to keep the divine with you always, not just for a few precious minutes in the morning, but all day, every day, the answer may be simpler than you think. You do not need to rearrange your schedule or withdraw from the world. You need only to learn how to hold a sacred sound in your mind and heart, like a steady flame. And this is what we will explore together now. The practice of silently chanting a divine mantra everywhere, and the extraordinary changes that begin to unfold when you do. A mantra is more than a word. In the world of ordinary language, words are symbols, simple sounds that point to objects, ideas, or emotions. They help us communicate thoughts, share stories, and exchange information. But a divine mantra is different. It is not simply a symbol for something higher. It is the living vibration of the higher itself. It does not point to God, it carries the presence of God within it. When the ancient sages and rishis of India withdrew into the stillness of the Himalayas, they were not inventing mantras. They were not crafting them like poets arranging verses. They were listening with a depth of inner silence few of us can imagine for the eternal sounds that pulse through creation itself. They discovered that before there were languages, before there were names and forms, before the earth had mountains or seas, there was sound. This was not sound as we hear it with our ears, but the original vibration, the creative hum, the cosmic current from which the universe itself arose. The Bible calls it the Word, saying, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." The yogis call it Nada Brahma, the sound God. the sound which is God. To hold a divine mantra in your mind is to hold a thread of that original creative vibration. It is to align your consciousness with the very frequency that brought you into being. Paramahansa Yogananda often explained that the power of a mantra is not in its meaning alone, but in its vibration. You could chant a phrase in a language you do not intellectually understand, and still your soul would feel its power, because the sound carries a certain divine charge. When the lips do not move and the voice is silent, the mantra becomes even more subtle. Its vibration is absorbed directly into the mind, into the very fabric of thought. You are not simply repeating something, you are bathing your inner being in the current of the infinite. In this way, a mantra is not so much spoken as it is remembered. It is the soul's way of recalling what it has always known, but has momentarily forgotten that it is one with God. Think of it like the gentle humming a mother makes to soothe her child. The sound itself does not instruct the child in any logical way. Rather, it carries an energy of love, of safety, of belonging. The divine mantra does this for the soul. Every time you repeat it, you are reminding yourself and affirming to the universe that you are not alone, that you are not adrift in chaos, that you belong eternally to the infinite light from which you came. And here is the beauty of the silent practice. Because it does not rely on the outer voice, it is boundless in its reach. You can carry the mantra into any environment, a noisy marketplace, a quiet train, a stressful meeting, a moment of stillness before sleep, and it will remain as powerful as if you were sitting in deep meditation. You become like a tuning fork, constantly aligned to the pitch of the divine. No matter what notes the world plays around you, whether they are harmonious or discordant, your inner vibration stays pure and steady. This is why Yogananda encouraged his students to find a mantra that resonates deeply with their heart, and then to carry it everywhere, silently, like a precious jewel hidden in the folds of their consciousness. You do not need to announce it, to draw attention to it, or to make a display of your practice. God hears you in the silence. The angels, the masters, the saints, they hear you too. And perhaps most importantly, your own soul hears you and begins to awaken to its own infinite nature. When you begin to silently chant a divine mantra everywhere you go, the first changes are almost imperceptible, like the earliest signs of dawn seeping into the dark sky. You may not notice them immediately, but your inner world starts to shift in ways that are both gentle and profound. The noise in your mind, which perhaps you had grown so accustomed to that you barely realized it was there, begins to soften. Thoughts that once ran wild like restless waves start to find a rhythm, a calm tide that ebbs and flows with the beat of the mantra. It is as though someone has been tuning the strings of your inner instrument, and suddenly, you are resonating in harmony with something vast and beautiful. In the beginning, you might still feel the pull of old patterns, anxieties that whisper to you, judgments that rise unbidden, memories that sting. But here is the miracle. Each time they arise, the mantra is there, like a trusted friend placing a hand on your shoulder, reminding you to breathe, to look up, to return to the still point within. Over time, these old patterns start to lose their power. They still appear, but they dissolve more quickly, unable to root themselves in the soil of a mind that is constantly bathed in sacred sound. The heart, too, begins to change. There is a warmth that grows quietly in the center of your chest, as though the mantra is a sun shining inside you, radiating light into the darkest corners of your being. You may find yourself feeling more compassion for people you once struggled to forgive. You may find yourself smiling at strangers without knowing why, or feeling tears rise in moments of unexpected beauty, a birdsong, the kindness of a shopkeeper, the way sunlight falls through the leaves in your path. These are not small things. They are signs that your soul is awakening to the presence of God in every detail. Yogananda often taught that when the heart is steeped in divine remembrance, it naturally becomes a magnet for higher experiences. You begin to feel guided in ways that defy logic, arriving just in time to meet someone who will help you, finding solutions to problems you had nearly given up on, sensing an inner yes or no before making decisions. This is not magic in the shallow sense. It is the natural flow of life when you are attuned to the greater harmony of spirit. The mantra, whispered in the silence of your mind, keeps you tuned to that frequency. And there is another transformation, subtler still. You start to notice that you no longer feel quite so alone. Even in moments of solitude, there is a presence gentle, loving, watchful. It is as if the mantra itself has become a doorway, and through it, the infinite is quietly stepping into your daily life. You begin to sense the nearness of angels, of masters, of divine beings who walk unseen but whose presence can be felt like a fragrance in the air. You feel guarded, not in a way that removes all challenges, but in a way that reassures you that whatever comes, you are never without help. This is the quiet alchemy of the practice. The mantra transforms the raw material of your everyday thoughts and emotions into the gold of spiritual awareness. It turns the cluttered room of your mind into a temple. It takes the scattered light of your attention and focuses it into a beam capable of piercing the densest clouds. And perhaps most beautifully, it teaches you without words that the love and protection you seek have been here all along, waiting for you to remember. Selecting a mantra is not about collecting a magical phrase from a catalog of sacred sounds. It is about recognizing which vibration calls to the deepest part of your soul, the one that feels like home. In Yogananda's teachings, a mantra is more than just a sequence of syllables. It is a living current, a spiritual frequency that has the power to align your consciousness with the divine. To choose your mantra is to choose the spiritual note you will play, the one you will carry with you through the corridors of your mind in every moment of your life. You may find that the mantra chooses you. It could appear in a book you happen to open, in the words of a teacher, or even in the quiet of meditation when a sound or phrase seems to emerge from the depths of your own being. When this happens, pay attention to how it feels in your body. Does it bring a sense of peace, like stepping into a warm ray of sunlight? Does it make your chest feel light, your breathing ease, your thoughts grow still? These sensations are not to be dismissed. They are confirmations that your soul is responding to the vibration. In the yogic tradition, there are ancient mantras preserved for thousands of years, each carrying a unique resonance. Some call directly upon God's name, Om, the primal sound of creation, Om Namah Shivaya, saluting the inner divinity, Hare Krishna, invoking the joy of divine love. Others may be more personal prayers, simple invocations like, Beloved Lord, guide me, or God and Guru, to be with me. What matters is not the complexity of the mantra, but the sincerity with which it is held and repeated. Yogananda himself would often say that the soul responds to the language of the heart, not the language of the tongue. Choosing a mantra also means committing to it. Just as a musician must practice the same scale until it becomes second nature, the seeker must stay faithful to the chosen sound so that it becomes embedded in the subconscious and even in the body's cells. The mind loves novelty, and it will tempt you to change mantras when you feel restless. But real transformation comes from consistency. A single seed nurtured daily will grow into a mighty tree, whereas scattering seeds and moving on will never yield a harvest. Before making your choice, take time in silence. Sit with your eyes closed, spine straight, breathing slowly. Whisper a mantra you are considering and observe the inner echo it leaves. Does it linger like a sweet fragrance? Does it draw your attention upward toward the point between the eyebrows, where spiritual awakening stirs? These are signs of a good fit. You will know it is the right mantra when it feels less like a foreign word and more like a lost part of yourself being returned to you. Once chosen, honor it. Treat it like a sacred jewel placed in your care. Whisper it before you sleep, upon waking, in moments of anxiety, in moments of joy. Let it be with you when you are walking, working, or sitting quietly at a bus stop. The mantra will begin to work in ways you cannot predict, dissolving knots of karma, opening doors of intuition, and drawing you ever closer to the heart of God. In time, you will realize that this choice you made or that was made for you was never random. It was part of the divine plan all along, a gift from the infinite, waiting until you were ready to receive it. Silent chanting is an art, a way of living in continual prayer without drawing the attention of the world, a method by which the soul keeps its face turned toward God while still moving through the countless duties and interactions of the day. In Yogananda's approach, this is not a rigid or forced discipline, but a gentle, unbroken conversation with the divine, a background melody that plays beneath every other sound in your life. The beauty of silent chanting is that no one around you needs to know you are doing it, yet it can transform your inner state as surely as a river reshapes the land it touches. The first step is to anchor the mantra in your breath. As you inhale, let the first part of the mantra flow silently through your mind. As you exhale, complete it. This breathing pattern becomes a natural rhythm that syncs the sacred sound with the body's most fundamental movement. Soon the breath itself becomes a prayer, and your nervous system begins to associate inhalation and exhalation with peace, devotion, and inner stillness. This is the seed of practicing anywhere, anytime. From there, begin weaving the mantra into simple, everyday actions. Walking to your car, chant it silently with each step. Standing in line at the store, let it circulate in your mind instead of scrolling aimlessly on your phone. Washing dishes, cooking dinner, folding laundry, these are not obstacles to spiritual practice, but perfect opportunities for it. Yogananda would often remind his students that the soul's growth depends far less on what we are doing than on how we are doing it, and silent chanting keeps the how infused with sacred attention. At work or in public, the technique is the same. Keep the lips closed, the voice silent, and the mantra running like a soft current in the background of your mind. If a coworker or a stranger engages you, pause the chanting to respond naturally, and then gently return to it. In time, you'll discover that you no longer need to consciously restart the mantra. It hums on its own, even while you are speaking or focusing on something else. This is when it becomes less of a practice and more of a state of being. Silent chanting is also a sanctuary in moments of stress or emotional turbulence. If an argument arises, if you receive bad news, or if anxiety suddenly grips you, turning to the mantra in your mind can stabilize you instantly. It's like gripping the rail of a sturdy bridge in the midst of high winds, a point of stability that keeps you from being swept away by the force of circumstance. Before long, you will notice that the mantra follows you into times when you are not consciously directing it, into dreams, into the space between waking and sleeping, into those quiet pauses in thought when the mind is not otherwise occupied. This is the sign that the divine name is rooting itself deep in your consciousness, becoming as constant and natural as your own heartbeat. In practicing silent chanting everywhere, you are not escaping life. You are saturating life with the presence of the infinite. Each step, each breath, each passing hour becomes an offering, and the world itself becomes your temple. This is the true goal, not merely to chant in silence, but to live in such a way that the silence itself is filled with the music of God. At first, the practice of silently chanting a divine mantra may feel like a gentle undercurrent, something quiet and unobtrusive, woven into the background of your daily life. But over days and weeks, the current gathers strength. It is here that the first signs of transformation begin to emerge, so subtle at the start that you may not even attribute them to the mantra. One day you realize that the small irritations that used to spark impatience no longer rattle you so quickly. Another day, you find yourself smiling inwardly for no particular reason, as though an unseen warmth were radiating from your own heart. This is the invisible alchemy. Yogananda spoke of the way divine sound, repeated with devotion, reshapes the mind from the inside out. Old habits of thought, rooted in fear, doubt, or criticism, begin to lose their grip. They don't vanish overnight, but they weaken, like shadows dissolving under a rising sun. You might notice that instead of brooding over problems, your mind drifts toward solutions, or better yet, toward trust in divine timing. Relationships, too, often shift without any deliberate effort on your part. People around you may sense the calm in your presence, even if they cannot name it. Arguments may dissipate before they escalate, as though the current of peace flowing through you softens the atmosphere. Opportunities, conversations, and moments of beauty seem to arise in unexpected ways, aligning with a deeper rhythm you are now attuned to. Your perception of time also begins to change. Instead of feeling constantly pulled into the future or dragged into the past, you start to dwell more naturally in the present moment. The mantra, silently repeated, anchors you here and now, making each moment feel fuller, more vivid, and strangely timeless. A cup of tea in your hands, the play of sunlight through leaves, the sound of distant laughter, these simple things begin to feel rich with divine presence. Another transformation is in the way you relate to your own inner voice. The chatter of the mind, once noisy and restless, grows quieter. The mantra's vibration begins to replace the static with a steady, harmonious tone. This creates a space where intuition can speak more clearly, and you find yourself guided in ways that are gentle but unmistakable. Sometimes this comes as a quiet knowing, other times as a sudden flash of inspiration. But either way, you recognize it as a voice deeper than thought. Perhaps the most profound change is the deepening sense of companionship with the divine. You no longer feel entirely alone, even in solitude. The mantra becomes like the presence of a friend walking beside you, a friend who never judges, never leaves, and whose only aim is to lead you home. This companionship is not imagined. It is the awakening of a truth that has always been there, that God is closer than your own breath, nearer than your own heartbeat. These subtle transformations are the true miracles of silent chanting. They are not always dramatic, but they are enduring. And as they take root, they prepare you for even greater shifts, the opening of the heart, the expansion of consciousness, and the quiet certainty that your life is unfolding in harmony with the highest good. Life, no matter how spiritually devoted we may be, is not free from challenges. Obstacles arise in many forms: a sudden financial burden, a misunderstanding in a cherished relationship, a wave of self-doubt that seems to come from nowhere. Yogananda often reminded his disciples that these difficulties are not punishments, but tests and opportunities for the soul's growth. Yet in the midst of such moments, the mind can easily be swept away into anxiety or defensiveness. This is where the silent chanting of a divine mantra becomes not just a practice of inner peace, but a shield and a sword in the spiritual sense, a shield that protects the heart and a sword that cuts through the fog of negativity. When you silently repeat the mantra while facing a challenge, you begin to change the inner environment in which that challenge exists. Instead of fueling the situation with reactive thoughts, the mantra infuses it with calm, clarity, and divine presence. It is as though you are bringing God into the room, into the conversation, into the very fabric of the moment. This subtle shift can make solutions more visible and can diffuse tensions before they escalate. Sometimes the outer problem remains for a time, but you notice that its emotional weight has lessened, as though the mantra were quietly lifting it off your shoulders. Negative energy, whether it comes from within or from the environment around you, thrives in unconsciousness in moments when the mind is disconnected from higher awareness. The mantra interrupts this cycle. Even if someone directs anger, criticism, or hostility toward you, silently chanting the mantra within yourself keeps your energy anchored in a higher vibration, preventing you from absorbing or reflecting back the negativity. In this way, the mantra becomes an invisible boundary of light, porous to love and compassion, but impermeable to malice or fear. Yogananda describes such mantric protection as not merely psychological, but vibrational. The repetition of a sacred sound sets up a field around you, much like the soft hum of a well-tuned instrument, and discordant vibrations simply cannot resonate in its presence. Over time, this protective field becomes so steady that you walk through your days with a quiet sense of immunity from energies that once easily disturbed you. Obstacles also have a way of shrinking in the presence of this practice. A difficulty that once felt insurmountable can begin to seem manageable, even solvable, when approached from the calm vantage point the mantra creates. It doesn't mean you bypass practical steps. Rather, those steps become clearer and more effective because they are chosen from a place of centered awareness. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of using the mantra in this way is the transformation it brings to your relationship with adversity itself. Challenges stop feeling like purely unwelcome intrusions and start to feel like sacred assignments, each one an opportunity to test the strength of your connection with the divine. In this light, the mantra is not only a remedy but a reminder that no matter what storms may pass through your life, there is within you a still point of eternal calm, a flame that no wind can extinguish, a song of the soul that cannot be silenced. When you begin to live with a divine mantra resonating in the background of your consciousness, you may first notice the internal changes: a calmer mind, a steadier heart, and increased resilience to life's demands. But soon, something remarkable happens. The energy of the mantra starts to radiate outward, subtly influencing how you perceive and interact with others. Yogananda often taught that the vibration of a sincere spiritual practice cannot be contained within the boundaries of the body. It naturally extends into the space around you, affecting the people, animals, and even the very atmosphere you encounter. This expansion of compassion is not manufactured by the ego. It flows effortlessly from the soul when the mind is continually aligned with a sacred sound. Silently chanting the mantra while listening to a friend, while walking past a stranger, or while sitting in a crowded room transforms those moments from mundane to sacred. You begin to see beyond appearances the hurried expression on someone's face, the rough tone in their voice, and instead sense the soul light within them. The mantra acts like a lens, sharpening your vision to perceive the divine essence in all beings. In daily life, this manifests as patience where you might otherwise feel irritation, or gentleness where you might once have been abrupt. People may not know why, but they often respond differently in your presence, softening, opening up, or simply feeling more at ease. Yogananda explained that this is because the mantra's vibration carries a subtle but tangible blessing. When you are silently repeating it, you are, in effect, offering a silent prayer for everyone you encounter. May you be blessed. May you be uplifted. May you remember your own divinity. The mantra also deepens your empathy. When someone is struggling, you find yourself naturally tuning into their unspoken needs, and instead of being pulled into their distress, you silently chant the mantra, directing its energy toward their healing and peace. This is not about imposing your will or expecting a specific outcome, but about offering the purest gift you can give, the remembrance of God's presence. In relationships, whether with family, friends, or colleagues, the mantra can dissolve subtle barriers. Old resentments, misunderstandings, or walls of indifference can begin to crumble in the warmth of its vibration. Sometimes the change is gradual. Other times, it can be startlingly immediate, as if the mantra unlocks a door that has been closed for years. You realize that the separation you once felt was largely an illusion maintained by the mind, and that the heart, when tuned to divine love, knows no true distance from any soul. Even in the wider world, as you move through communities, cities, or nature itself, the mantra becomes a quiet offering. Walking down a street, you silently chant it, and it is as if each step plants seeds of peace in the soil of the world. Passing through a forest or along a shore, the mantra aligns your heart with the harmony already present in creation, and you feel yourself not just as an observer of life, but as an active participant in its sacred unfolding. In time, you discover that the boundary between your inner practice and your outer relationships has dissolved. You are no longer simply a person chanting a mantra. You are the living expression of the mantra itself, a vessel through which divine compassion and connection flow without interruption. And in this way, the mantra fulfills one of its deepest purposes, to unite you not only with the God within, but with the God in everyone and everything around you. As your relationship with the mantra matures, you begin to notice a shift from effortful repetition to an effortless presence. At first, you had to remember to chant to bring the words into your mind, to consciously focus your attention on them. But with time, the mantra starts to repeat itself, as if it has woven itself into the very fabric of your consciousness. It is no longer something you do, it is something you are. This is the stage where the mantra becomes the bridge between the surface of the mind and the depths of the soul, guiding you naturally into profound inner silence. Yogananda often spoke of this stage as the moment when the soul slips beneath the waves of restless thought into the still, clear waters of spirit. Here, the mantra is not competing with your mind's chatter. Instead, it replaces it with a vibration so pure that it quiets all other movements. This silence is not empty, it is luminous, alive, and deeply fulfilling. You begin to understand that the mantra was never simply a collection of sacred syllables. It was always a current of divine consciousness, drawing you home to your source. In these moments of deep inner stillness, the sense of I as a separate being begins to dissolve. You no longer feel that you are a small individual reaching out toward God. Rather, you sense that you are already within God, as a wave is within the ocean. The mantra becomes a gentle hum within that infinite expanse, a reminder that while forms may change, the essence remains eternal and unbroken. This experience of oneness can arrive in subtle ways. You may be sitting quietly, chanting inwardly, and suddenly notice that the boundaries between your body and the space around you feel porous or even non-existent. You might feel a soft radiance surrounding you, as if you are embraced by something vast yet intimately close. Or you may sense a presence not external, but arising from the core of your own being that feels like pure love, pure peace, pure joy. The mantra, at this stage, is like the fragrance of a flower that continues to permeate the air long after the petals have been touched by the sun. Even when you stop chanting consciously, its essence remains, filling your awareness with a sweetness that cannot be manufactured by thought or will. This is why great saints and yogis describe mantra practice not only as a method of prayer, but as a living relationship. The mantra is a companion that walks with you into eternity. And yet, in this profound inner silence, you also find an unexpected paradox. The mantra fades into the background, and what remains is only God. It is as though the mantra has completed its task of bringing you into divine presence and now steps aside, allowing you to rest in pure being. There is no effort here, no striving, only an infinite expanse of love in which you are both the beloved and the lover, both the seeker and the sought. This deepening of inner silence is not an escape from life, but the foundation for a new way of living. The more you abide in this oneness, the more your daily actions are infused with grace. You carry this stillness into conversations, into work, into challenges, and even into moments of sorrow or uncertainty. It is as if the mantra has carved out a permanent sanctuary within you, a holy place where you can always return, no matter what is happening in the outer world. And in that sanctuary, there is no fear, no doubt, no separation, only the unshakable knowing that you and the divine are one, and that this oneness is the truest and most enduring reality. As we come to the close of this journey together, remember that the practice we have explored is not just another technique to add to your spiritual routine. It is a living, breathing connection with the eternal. Silently chanting the divine mantra everywhere you go is more than a devotional exercise. It is the gradual reorientation of your entire being toward the source from which you came and to which you will ultimately return. Each repetition is like a drop of pure nectar falling into the ocean of your soul, sweetening the waters until they overflow with love, peace, and divine awareness. If you have followed this practice with sincerity, you may have already begun to notice subtle shifts in the way you see the world. The same streets you walk each day may seem brighter, as if lit from within. The faces of strangers may carry a quiet beauty you had overlooked before. Challenges may feel less like walls and more like doorways through which your faith can step. These are not small changes. They are the first fruits of your growing intimacy with God through the mantra. And remember, the transformation is not always dramatic or sudden. Like a seed buried deep in the soil, your practice works quietly and steadily, unseen yet profoundly alive. One day, perhaps without realizing exactly when it happened, you will find that your heart has softened, your mind has quieted, and your life is guided by a calm strength that was not there before. This is the grace of the divine responding to the constancy of your call. Yogananda often said that God is love, and love is the magnetic power that draws the beloved to the devotee. Your mantra is an expression of that love whispered not only in your mind, but in the silent language of your soul. Every inward repetition is like knocking on the door of heaven, and heaven never ignores a sincere knock. Sometimes the answer will come as peace, sometimes as guidance, sometimes as a sudden lifting of burdens you did not know you were carrying. And sometimes the answer will simply be God's silent presence, which is the greatest gift of all. So, as you leave this moment and return to your daily life, carry the mantra with you as you would carry a precious jewel close to your heart, never forgotten, always shining. Let it be the first thing your mind turns to upon waking and the last whisper before you drift into sleep. Let it accompany you in joy and in challenge, in stillness and in motion, until there is no separation between the mantra and your very breath. And now, before we part, I offer you this blessing. May your heart be a sanctuary of unshakable peace. May your mind rest in the clarity of divine truth. May your soul walk in the company of the eternal friend, never alone, always guided, always loved. May the silent chant of the mantra be the current that carries you, not only through this life but into the boundless freedom of spirit. Take a deep breath now. Feel the presence of the divine surrounding you, holding you, smiling within you. And as you exhale, release any remaining doubts, fears, or distractions, and step forward in the light of your own awakened consciousness. This is your path. This is your joy. This is your eternal home. Beloved soul, what if I told you that the greatest omission in your spiritual education was not born of malice, but of misunderstanding, that what was hidden was not hidden by darkness, but by forgetfulness? What if I whispered to your heart that the Jesus you have been shown is only the outer garment of a cosmic truth, far more radiant, far more universal, far more liberating than any creed could ever capture? There is a silence in the gospel narrativa, void between the age of 12 and 30, silence so deafening that only the meditative heart can hear what truly transpired in those missing years. The boy Jesus, whose words astonished the temple priests, did not vanish into obscurity. He walked east. He journeyed to the lands of eternal wisdom, where the snows of the Himalayas cradle the saints of India, where the eternal science of yoga was already ancient when the pyramids were young. The soul who was born to embody Christ consciousness was drawn, as if by divine magnetism, to those shores where rishis meditate in caves, where the breath is offered in silence to the infinite, where the third eye is open like a celestial lotus to glimpse the divine light within. Jesus did not come to abolish religion, but to fulfill it. And to fulfill his universal mission, he sought not the limited rituals of sex, but the direct revelation of the Spirit. He went where truth was undivided, where Krishna and the eternal Om had never been imprisoned in dogma or buried beneath centuries of theological dust. I tell you, beloved, that Yogananda was not speculating when he said, "The teachings of Jesus and Krishna are one in essence." He was remembering. He was testifying from the inner vision that sees through time. He was lifting the veil so you could remember too. And now, you who listen with the ears of the soul must ask, what if two rivers separated by history, by empire, by geography are in truth the same stream, flowing from the one source? What if Jesus drank from the fountain of yoga not to abandon his mission, but to fulfill it as the divine bridge between east and west, between spirit and form, between your soul and its forgotten origin? There is a silence that speaks louder than scripture, a space between verses that echoes with forgotten thunder, and it is in this very silence, the undocumented years of Jesus' life, that the truth begins to shimmer like a mirage across the sands of time. Between the ages of 12 and 30, the Bible falls silent, and yet the soul of Christ was not idle. The silence is not emptiness, it is invitation. For the divine soul called Jesus did not disappear into mundane obscurity. He walked eastward, drawn by the very vibration of God's eternal truth radiating from the Himalayan snows. There, in the sanctified groves and hidden ashrams of India, among saints who had mastered the breath and conquered the delusion of death, Jesus studied not as a foreigner, but as one returning to a lineage he had known in spirit across incarnations. Ancient Indian scrolls and temple inscriptions, preserved in Ladakh and Puri, tell of a saint named Isa, a luminous youth of divine birth, who came from the west to dwell among the rishis and sannyasis. This Isa lived with the Brahmins and Buddhists, spoke of one God, condemned caste, and learned the sacred science of communion with the infinite. He absorbed the teachings of the Vedas not as novelty, but as sacred memory returning. He meditated not as a beginner, but as one rediscovering his own light. In the silence of Himalayan caves, Jesus sat beside men who had stilled the breath, who had seen the blue sphere of Christ consciousness within, and who had entered samadhi, the divine union beyond thought, beyond self. He did not come to borrow from their tradition. He came to remember that it was already his own. And who were the first to acknowledge his divinity at birth? It was not the rabbis, not the Roman scribes, but the wise men of the East Magi, saints, yogishu, followed a divine star to offer frankincense and myrrh, gifts not of superstition, but of deep spiritual knowing. These sages were not merely spectators to a miracle. They were heralds of a cosmic prophecy. And in their bowing, they planted a seed. That seed would later draw the young Christ to their lands, to be nourished by the same divine current they had already recognized within him. It was a return, not a departure. The river had found its source again. Can you not feel it? That the path of Jesus was not broken, but continuous? That the very breath of yoga, the science of God union, through meditation, stillness, and surrender was not foreign to him, but encoded in his soul before birth? He did not come to divide east and west, but to show that truth is one. He traveled not to discover God, but to immerse himself in the sacred tools that would help the world remember God as its only self. And it was in India that the Christ child of Nazareth was fully ignited into the Christ avatar of eternity. Shall we continue, beloved, into the next chapter? the sacred teachings he received among the yogis. In the still, golden hush of the Himalayas, where snow-capped peaks rise like frozen prayers to the infinite, and the silence itself breathes with the memory of sages, Jesus received not doctrine but direct experience, not sermons but soul transference. What he imbibed from the saints of Bharat was not a new religion, but the eternal science of self-realization, the sacred art through which the drop remembers it is the sea. These were not teachings to be argued, but vibrations to be lived. The breath, he learned, was not merely air, it was the chariot of spirit, the spine, not just bone, but the altar through which divine light flows, and the mind, not just a thinking instrument, but the veil that must be pierced to behold the face behind all creation. Here he learned what all true yogis know, that there is a center between the eyebrows, a spiritual eye, a luminous portal beyond flesh and thought, and that when one's consciousness is fixed there in stillness and love, the soul begins to see what the eyes never can. When he later uttered, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light," it was not metaphor, it was map. A map inward, past the senses, into the kingdom not of this world but within. That center what yogis call the Ajna chakra, the Kutastha Chaitanya, the Christ consciousness within is where duality dissolves and divinity begins. They taught him to sit in stillness, to still the breath, to withdraw the life force up the spine into the brain, to merge with the bliss behind all motion. They guided him into breathless communion, where the soul dissolves into God, where time ceases and eternity sings in golden silence. These were not speculative practices, they were scientific. Just as fire always burns and water always flows downward, so too does God always respond to deep inner communion. Jesus practiced these truths, not as ritual, but as realization. And it was through this inner training that the human Jesus was transfigured into the living Christ, not a title of exclusivity, but of universality. He began to perceive, in every leaf and face, in every movement and stillness, the same consciousness that sustains galaxies and whispers within the heart of every seeker. When he said, "I and my Father are one," it was not egoic claim, but the natural result of yoga of divine union. He had touched the timeless, and in that touch, all separation had vanished. He had ascended not to escape the world, but to show the world what it truly was. And thus, when Jesus returned from the East and began his brief ministry in the West, he no longer taught as a man quoting God, he taught as a being who had merged with the infinite. Every parable, every healing, every word carried the silent power of the yogic truths he had absorbed, not borrowed from India, but reawakened in the sanctuary of his soul. These truths were not Indian or Jewish, they were cosmic, eternal, the sacred inheritance of all souls. Shall we now proceed, dear traveler, into the hidden language buried within the very Bible you thought you knew? Let us uncover what was never lost, only hidden, awaiting the light of awakened eyes. The scriptures, when read with the eyes of the flesh, become words on a page bound, finite, wrapped in time and tongue. But when read with the eye of intuition, when read in the light of stillness and the fragrance of God communion, the Bible becomes not a book, but a living flame. The teachings of Jesus, like those of Krishna, Buddha, and all illumined masters, were never meant to be entombed in dogma or reduced to literalism. They were meant to be keys, golden, mystical, vibrant keys that unlock the inner kingdom within each seeker's soul. The kingdom of God is within you, said the Christ, not in temples made with hands, not in hierarchies or arguments, but in the very silence between your breaths, in the stillness behind your thoughts. Yet how often has that phrase been glossed over, skimmed past like a pebble upon the surface of an ocean, never diving into its infinite depth? And what of the Christ? Was it his surname? No, beloved, it was his state of being. Christ is not a man, but a consciousness. It is the all-pervading, omnipresent, ever-blissful awareness of God individualized within creation. In Sanskrit, this same reality is called Kutastha Chaitanyathe, changeless consciousness behind all change, the unstruck music behind all sound. Jesus, the man, became the Christ by merging into this vast ocean of divine awareness. And the great mystery, the great heresy to the mind bound in fear, is this: you were born to do the same. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect, was not a metaphor. but a call to arms, an invitation to resurrection before death. Even the very structure of Christian doctrine conceals within it the yogic truths of vibration, breath, and inner awakening. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What is this Word, if not the eternal the cosmic vibration that emerged from the silence of spirit and gave birth to all worlds? In the yogic scriptures, it is said that the Holy Ghost, is the first manifestation of God in creation. It is not merely a sound, but the sacred power, the bridge between spirit and matter, the invisible wave upon which light, time, and breath ride. It is the very comforter that Jesus promised, which would abide within us, teach us all things, and bring all truth to remembrance externally, but within the temple of the soul. And so we must ask, was this truly hidden, or was it simply veiled by the mind's restlessness? Were these teachings buried, or were they waiting, patiently, like the morning sun behind heavy clouds, for the clear gaze of the seeker to behold them? The Christ spoke always in parables, not to obscure the truth, but to protect it, to ensure it would be sought, not swallowed, lived, not merely learned. The Bible was never a prison of doctrine, it was a doorway to silence, to the soul, to God. But only for those who dared to read it with the single eye, with the lamp of inner vision ignited through meditation, humility, and divine yearning. Shall we now move onward, into the heart of Christ himself, not the symbol of religion, but the master of prana, the yogi of light, whose very breath echoed with the power that sustains the stars? Let us continue, not outward, but inward, deeper into the sacred science Jesus carried in his very bones. When you strip away the layers of doctrine, ritual, and centuries of interpretation, and when you gaze inward with the pure eye of the heart, you will see not merely a figure upon a cross, but a radiant being of light seated in lotus stillness, spine straight as a pillar of fire, breath stilled into silence, gaze lifted to the point between the eyebrows, the Christ, the yogi, the Son of the Infinite. Jesus was not only the Lamb, the Shepherd, the teacher, he was a master of prana, the divine life force that flows through all atoms, all thoughts, all dimensions. His miracles were not spectacles, but demonstrations of spiritual law. His healings were not interventions, but harmonizations of energy. His walk upon the waters, his calming of storms, his raising of Lazarus, these were not violations of natural law, but expressions of a higher law, the law that governs spirit over matter. For he knew what the yogis of India have always known, that breath is not merely oxygen, but the carrier of consciousness, that the spine is not simply vertebrae and nerve, but the sacred highway of divine current, that when one withdraws the restless breath and stills the flickering mind, the soul begins to expand, the senses begin to dissolve, and one's being merges into the vibrationless joy of the infinite. Jesus practiced what in the East is called Kriya Yoga, sacred science of self-realization, through breath mastery. And though this may seem radical to some, it is not heresy, it is history. It is mystic science. It is soul remembrance. When he withdrew into the wilderness for 40 days, what was he doing? When he fasted, when he prayed alone on the mountaintop, when he spent nights in solitude, these were not simply acts of piety. They were the disciplines of a master yogi. The inner work required to pierce the veil of Maya and commune with the Father in the secret place. Even his death, which so many focus on as the pinnacle of his mission, was not the final miracle, it was his resurrection. His conscious return to the body, his demonstration of spirit's supremacy over the flesh, that bore the seal of yogic realization. He had mastered not only life, but death. He had moved beyond karma, beyond individuality, and returned as the Christ not bound by time or form. And so when you see him now, do not only see the robes and the crown of thorns, see the light pouring from his third eye, see the stillness in his breathless spine, see the calm joy in his eyes as he beholds the Father everywhere, in all, through all, as all. He was not trying to create a religion, he was trying to awaken souls. And the method he taught, whether veiled in parable or lived in silence, was yoganian with the infinite. Not yoga as stretching or posture, but yoga as divine communion, as inward ascent, as the stilling of the waves of the mind, so that the moon of Christ consciousness can shine clear upon the soul's lake. And now, beloved, Let us turn to the eternal mirror, to the avatars. Krishna and Christu's lives, though separated by continents and centuries, reflect the same sun. Let us behold their divine parallel, and in it discover our own timeless nature. Let your heart listen now, not with the intellect that measures time and culture, but with the soul that recognizes eternal truth wherever it appears. For when the spirit awakens, it ceases to see boundaries and begins to see echoes of the same divine word, resounding through many mouths, many lands, many lives. Such is the echo between Christ and Krishna, not in their names alone, which mirror each other like reflections in the waters of cosmic consciousness, but in their lives, their missions, and their very essence. Both were born of divine promise, Krishna to Devaki and Christ to Mariech, a virgin mother bathed in light, surrounded by celestial signs, foretelling that the infinite had once again wrapped himself in form to walk among his children. Each was hunted in infancy by tyrants Herod, in Judea, Kamsa, in Mathura, who feared the light that would dismantle their darkness. Each vanished for a time from the public eye, only to return in maturity with a message that transcended ritual and spoke directly to the soul. Krishna stood in the chariot with Arjuna, commanding him not to abandon the battle of life, but to fight as a soul beyond birth and death, guided not by desire but by dharma, and always anchored in the vision of God. And Jesus stood upon the mount, saying, "Resist not evil, but love your enemies," not as a call to weakness, but as a summons to the greatest inner worth, battle to rise above ego and perceive divinity in all. Krishna proclaimed, "When goodness grows weak, when evil increases, I come again and again." Jesus said, "Before Abraham was, I am," not boasting of historical age, but declaring his eternal identity as the Christ consciousness, the same that Krishna embodied, that Buddha radiated, that lives latent within every human soul. They both healed with touch, taught with parables, confounded the proud, and comforted the humble. They both were rejected by their own, betrayed by those closest to them, and yet forgiven not from moral obligation, but from a love so vast it made no distinction between friend and foe. And their teachings, when read not with dogmatic rigidity but with intuitive stillness, mirror one another like two hands in prayer. The Gita whispers, "Be steadfast in yoga, O Arjuna," while the Gospels say, "Abide in me, and I in you." Krishna teaches the impermanence of body, the eternity of soul. Jesus says, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth." Krishna speaks of the self as unborn, undying, untouched by weapon or fire. Jesus declares, "Fear not them which kill the body, but fear not at all, for I am with you always." This is not coincidence. This is the timeless fragrance of one spirit blowing through many gardens. The light of God did not shine one seat, shines eternally, and when it takes form in a Christ or a Krishna, it does so not to start a new faith, but to remind the sleeping soul of its origin. There is no east or west in spirit. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west, but its light belongs to the world, and so too does truth. Let us now lift our gaze to the one who came, not to speak, but to awaken, not to found a religion, but to recall the ancient unity, the deathless yogi, the eternal seer, whose mission was to fuse Krishna and Christ once more in the hearts of all mankind. Let us walk with Babaji. In the high Himalayan solitudes where the noise of the world cannot climb, where the winds speak secrets to the snows and the silence itself has memory, there dwells one whose presence defies time, whose body answers to no decay, and whose mission is a golden bridge spanning centuries and civilizations. Babaji, the deathless yogi, is not legend but luminous fact spoken of by saints, seen by sages, and known to those whose souls have brushed the hem of the infinite. He is not merely a man but a divine messenger, a silent flame whose very existence proves that the spirit, once anchored fully in God, can transcend all laws of matter. It was he who summoned Lahiri Mahasaya, not with words but with will, and re-gifted to the world the sacred science that had long been hidden, the Kriya Yoga of the Rishis, the spinal path to divine awakening, the key to Christ consciousness within the human form. But more than a technique, Babaji came bearing a mission as vast as the Skyesa task, not of religion, but of reunion. The time has come, he declared in that cosmic cave, to reawaken the West to the inner Christ not as a crucified idol, but as a living power within the soul. And whom did he choose to carry this sacred current across oceans and continents? A young monk with the eyes of a lion and the heart of a child, born in Bengal, yet destined to stand before presidents and peasants alike myself, your brother, your friend, sent not by ambition but by divine ordainment, for it was not enough to chant Krishna's name in India while the West worshipped Christ in separation. The two had to be revealed as one unlight, one truth, one consciousness, wearing two divine faces. The wisdom of the East had become veiled in ceremony, and the faith of the West had hardened into creed. Babaji's mission was to melt the ice around the heart of both and let the rivers of spirit flow together once more. He knew, as I came to know, that Krishna and Christ were not founders of rival religions, but expressions of the same infinite flame that, their lives, miracles, messages, and even their silent suffering, all pointed to the same center, that within each human soul dwells the kingdom of God, waiting to be known not through belief, but through realization. It was not a small task. To walk into the land of cathedrals and offer the Gita alongside the gospel was not to blend doctrines, but to awaken the soul's deeper remembrance that behind every scripture, if you listen with inner ears, the same voice is speaking. It says, "You are not a sinner, you are my child." It says, "Be still, and know I am God, not in a temple, not in a cloud, but in the still cave of your breath, in the sacred altar of your spine." That is the mission Babaji gave, and I accepted not as duty, but as love's calling. For what else is there to do, once you know that the same God who walked with Moses also danced with Radha, who whispered to Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree, and rose again in Jesus from the tomb? Let the dogmas fall like dry leaves. Let the soul awaken to spring. The time of separation is over. The flame that was hidden in the Himalayas has traveled westward in silence, lit now in your heart by grace, by longing, and by this very remembrance. You are not separate, you are not forgotten. The lamp of Babaji burns even now, and if you will sit still and breathe with reverence, its light will rise in your own being and whisper to you, as it did to me, "Go forth and remind them they are not dust, but divinity." You were not born to be broken. You were not placed in this world to wander through guilt like a beggar knocking at heaven's gate. You are not a mistake wearing a body, nor a sinner condemned by circumstance. You are light temporarily clothed in matter, spirit dreaming of itself, and even now, in your quiet breath, the pulse of God is whispering the ancient truth that no priest can bestow and no sin can erase, that Christ is not a name to worship, but a consciousness to awaken. This is the lost gospel, not of parchment and parable, but of inner realization. It is the gospel that Jesus knew when he said, not with pride, but with radiant knowing, "I and my Father are one." And it is the gospel he offered when he also said, "Be ye therefore perfect," not as commandment, but as remembrance. He did not come to parade his divinity above yours, she came to remind you of your own. Oh, how long the world has walked under the shadow of separation, mistaking humility for unworthiness and reverence for distance. But Christ did not come to create worshipers. He came to awaken lovers of God. He came not to build temples of stone, but to reveal the temple of your spine and breath, where the Holy Spirit, the sacred vibration of Aum, forever sings its hymn of union in the quiet chambers of your soul. And in this temple, there is no altar but love, no priest but stillness, and no offering but your longing to return to what you already are. This, my beloved, is the Christ that lives in you, not the crucified symbol of sorrow, but the ever-rising joy that cannot be held by death, time, or dogma. It is this inner Christ, this Kutastha Chaitanya, this immutable light between the eyebrows, that the yogis of India have worshipped since ancient times, not through belief, but through breath, through silence, through the practice of awakening the spiritual eye and lifting the mind beyond the turbulence of thought into the still waters of divine remembrance. This is your birthright, not someday, not after 1,000 penances, but now. Even as you listen, something in you knows, this is what I've always known. This is what I've been trying to remember. You are not waiting for the Christ to descend from clouds of fire. You are waiting to still your breath long enough to feel him already there in your spine, in your heartbeat, in the aching hunger you carry for something this world has never been able to offer. That hunger is holy. Do not run from it. It is Christ himself knocking at the door of your restlessness, saying, "Let me in, not so I can take you somewhere, but so I can show you you are already home." So, cast off the chains of unworthiness. Let go of the thought that holiness lives in others but not in you. You are not just a seeker of God, you are the image of God seeking itself. And when you sit to meditate, not as a sinner begging for grace, but as a soul daring to remember its origin, then the Christ within you rises not as myth, but as presence, and not as history, but as truth. You were not meant to worship Christ from afar. You were meant to become him from within. Let that become your sacred vow. Let that be your second coming. Let that be the moment you stop reaching outward and begin rising inward, into the light that was never lost, only forgotten. There is a moment, silent as snow upon a sleeping field, when the soul awakens not with fanfare, not with lightning or prophetic fire, but with the quiet and irrefutable knowing that God was never far, that Christ was never absent, that heaven has never been lost, only unremembered. This, beloved, is the second coming. Not the thunderous descent of a man through the clouds to strike the wicked and gather the saved, not the clash of angels and armies at the end of days, but the still and radiant uprising of Christ within your very being, like the sun that has waited behind your closed eyes, like the light that dawns not in the sky but in the quiet chamber behind the forehead, at the altar of the spiritual eye. Yogananda said it plainly, clearly, eternally. The second coming of Christ is the resurrection of the Christ consciousness in your own heart. The world has waited 2,000 years for a trumpet that will not sound in the air but already echoes in the soul. It waits for signs in the heavens while ignoring the signs in its own breath. It fears wrath and tribulation, yet misses the whisper of peace that comes when thought is stilled and the soul becomes the sky, vast and open to the descent of grace. Jesus did not point to himself as a spectacle to be worshipped. He pointed to the Father, to the light that shines beyond name and form. He promised not just return but indwelling. "I will not leave you comfortless," he said. "I will come to you." And how does he come? Not through fire or judgment, but as the Comforter, the Holy Ghost, the sacred vibration of Aum that enfolds your soul when you enter the silence. That sound, that inner word, is the Christ returning not to the world, but to you. The Bible speaks of the Word that was with God and was God. The yogis call it Aum, the primal sound from which all creation flows. The Comforter, the invisible one, is not a future event, it is a present reality, vibrating now within your breath, pulsing now within your spine, waiting now within your consciousness to be heard, known, embraced. When you meditate deeply, when breath stills and thoughts cease, you begin to hear it not with ears, but with sula, soundless sound, a river of light, a peace that surpasses all understanding. This is the Christ returning not to the world of nations, but to the kingdom within. And yet how many miss it, looking always outward, waiting for signs in the clouds, waiting for temples to rise or empires to fall, not knowing that the true temple is the spine, and the true throne is the Christ center between the eyebrows. The real battle is not in the Middle East, but in the middle of your consciousness, between the downward pull of Maya and the upward call of God. The apocalypse is not destruction, but revelation, the unveiling of your eternal identity. And the second coming is not for the many, but for the one who dares to close his eyes, quiet his breath, and open his heart to the God who never left. There is no need to wait for a Savior to come. You are the field in which the Christ must rise. You are the Bethlehem in which the light must be born. You are the disciple awaiting the return, not in fear but in stillness, not in hysteria but in humility. The Master comes again and again, not in robes or sandals, but as intuition, as inner knowing, as the peace that floods your being when ego falls silent and love takes its rightful place as king. Do not wait for heaven to appear in the sky, it is waiting to rise in your soul. The second coming is not a prophesied, is a choice. Make it now. Awaken. And let the Christ who once walked the hills of Galilee walk now through the corridors of your awareness. Let the light that turned water into wine turn your sorrow into joy. Let the one who rose from death rise again within you, not someday, but now, this very breath, this very moment. And now, dear soul, let us step beyond symbolism, beyond interpretation, and into the sacred chamber of practice. For the mysteries of spirit are not fully unlocked by intellect alone. nor by reading or belief, but by the direct communion of the soul with the infinite through the breath, through the spine, through the divine art of inner stillness. This is what the yogis called yoga, and what Jesus received during the silent years the world has forgotten. For in those lost years, hidden from the Gospels but remembered in the ether of divine testimony, Jesus did not merely wander in obscurity, he traveled eastward into the timeless Himalayas, into the presence of illumined rishis, into the sanctuaries of eternal knowledge where Kriya Yoga, the sacred science of breath and divine union, was offered to him not as religion, but as remembrance. This practice, this inner ladder of breath ascending the spine, became not only his personal sadhana, but the root of the miracles misunderstood by a world addicted to spectacle and blind to the laws of spirit. For what is Kriya Yoga, if not the resurrection breath of God circulating through the temple of man? It is not mere technique, it is not breathwork for the body. It is the highway of spirit, the sacred fire flowing up through the chakras, purifying karma, awakening memory, restoring the soul to its divine throne. When Jesus withdrew into the wilderness, when he fasted for 40 days, when he healed with a touch and spoke with a voice that stirred centuries of silence, it was not magic, it was mastery. It was the result of yogic realization, where the will of God becomes your own, and where the life force, normally enslaved to the senses, is drawn upward in loving offering back to its source. This is why Jesus walked on water, because he had transcended the gravitational pull of ego and matter. This is why he raised Lazarus, because he knew that the soul cannot die, only forget. And this is why his body rose from the tomb, because the yogi who has conquered breath has conquered death. Kriya Yoga is not new. It is the science behind all saints. It is the golden thread connecting Krishna, Christ, Babaji, and all awakened ones, known by many names but united by one realization, that God is not separate, that heaven is within, and that the breath is the chariot by which the soul rides home. Yogananda was sent by Babaji to bring this knowledge back to the West, not as an alternative religion, but as the completion of a forgotten truth that what Jesus lived, we too are meant to live. That his works were not his alone, but demonstrations of a path open to every soul who will walk it. And now, beloved, that path lies before you, not in the pages of old scriptures alone, but in the sacred art of stillness you may enter tonight. The next time you sit to pray, not with words but with breath, not in fear but in surrender. Kriya Yoga is the practice Jesus received and now returns to you, veiled not in dogma but in inner simplicity, available not to the elite but to the sincere. When you draw your energy inward, when you lift your gaze to the spiritual eye, when you learn to commune not through ritual but through vibration, you will find that the same Christ who walked the earth now walks within your spine, rising breath by breath from earth to ether, from ego to eternity, until you too can say not with arrogance, but with radiant humility, I and my Father are one. So take up the practice, not as an obligation, but as a return. Let Kriya become the cross you no longer bear, but transcend. Let it be your resurrection breath, your daily ascent into the kingdom within. And when you practice, know this: you are not imitating Christ, you are discovering him within. You are not remembering a man, you are reawakening the God that man came to reveal. This is the sacred heritage of your soul, not separation, but union, not worship, but realization, not waiting, but returning. Let the breath carry you home. Let the silence reveal what has never been absent. Let the practice awaken what has always been true. And now, let us go even deeper into the river of remembrance, into the place where the divisions of religion dissolve like morning mist beneath the sun of divine realization. For the story you have been told is only half written, and the light you have received is only half shown, because the East and West were never meant to be strangers, never meant to live in suspicion of one another, never meant to gaze across the oceans with theological misunderstanding or doctrinal pride. No, my beloved, they are not two paths, they are two wings of the same great swan, soaring through the ether of truth. The Christ and the Krishna, the Gospel and the Gita, the Aum and the Amen, are not rivals echoing different gods, but brothers speaking one eternal word in two divine accents. What you were taught to see as separate was never meant to be separate. What institutional memory divided, divine memory now begins to reunite. For the West is the body strong, structured, searching for God through action, form, incarnation, and history. In the East is the soul quiet, contemplative, searching for God in the inner silence, in the eternal breath, in the still witness behind all change. But what is the body without the soul? What is movement without silence? What is the cross without the lotus? Or the birth of Christ without the eternal aum from which all birth arises? When you look upon the life of Jesus without the veil of institutional editing, without the filters of religious politics or historical suppression, you begin to see something so luminous, so obvious, so humbling, that it stops the breath and melts the walls of spiritual ignorance. That Jesus the Christ was not Western, not Eastern, but divine. He was not sent to found a religion, but to awaken a realization. He did not speak in chapters and verses, but in vibration, in example, in the radiant energy of his God union. He did not say, "Follow me so you can belong to a church." He said, "Follow me so you may become as I am." He did not say, "I am the only way." He said, "I am the way," meaning the consciousness within the inner passage from ego to soul, from illusion to light, from separation to oneness. And when we look with the clear eye of spirit, we see that same consciousness pulsing in the words of the Upanishads, in the songs of Krishna, in the meditations of the yogis, in the breath of Kriya, in the gaze turned inward to the spiritual eye. This is not cultural fusion. This is soul recognition. What was lost must now be remembered, not with historical arguments or theological debates, but with the purity of spiritual intuition, which says, "I know this feeling. I have heard this voice before, not in language but in light." And when you touch that vibration within the vibration of love that liberates, of stillness that heals, of union that dissolves your boundaries, then you know. The Christ of Galilee and the Krishna of Vrindavan speak to the same soul within you. And their message is not rivalry, it is return. Return to God, who lives within you. Return to the kingdom, not in the clouds, but behind the closed eyes. Return to the eternal religion of self-realization, which is not Hindu or Christian or Buddhist or Muslim but simply divine. Yes, the West and the East were separated by centuries of misinterpretation. Yes, ego built towers where temples should have stood. Yes, power often replaced purity. But none of that can erase the eternal bond between Christ and yoga, between the Gospels and the Gita, between your breath and God's love. For now, in this new age of awakening, the walls are trembling, the gates are opening, the wisdom once hidden is returning not to the scholars, but to the seekers. Not to the institutions, but to the hearts that long to see clearly. And you, beloved soul, are a part of this remembering. You were born to bridge these worlds. You were sent not merely to believe, but to unify. You carry in your soul the cross and the lotus, the silence and the song, the fire of the prophets and the peace of the sages. Do not shrink from this sacred inheritance. Embrace it. Meditate with Christ in your spine. Chant Aum with Krishna in your heart. Read the Gospel with yogic eyes. Read the Gita with Christ's love flowing through your veins. This is the harmony the world forgot. This is the reunion your soul has been craving. And in remembering it, you do not abandon your tradition, you fulfill it. So walk now not as one who must choose sides, but as one who sees the whole. Speak not as a defender of doctrines, but as a child of light. Worship not with borrowed rituals, but with the fire of direct experience. And above all, love. Love without label. Love with the boundless compassion of a soul who has seen the unity beneath the forms. That is what Jesus learned from the yogis of India. And that is what you are now remembering in yourself. And now, dear soul, as we come to the sacred close of this journey, not the end, but the deepening, you must understand what all of this has been pointing toward. Why the lost years of Jesus matter. Why the voices of ancient yogis still echo through the silence of your own inner temple. Why the teachings that once seemed scattered and foreign now come together like the hidden strands of a golden tapestry, converging in the still center of your own awakening heart. For it is not enough to learn history if it does not become memory, not enough to receive teachings if they do not ignite realization, not enough to be told the truth if you do not live it in the marrow of your being. The purpose of revelation is not admiration, but transformation. And the soul, your soul, has not traveled across centuries of incarnations, only to bow before sacred stories. No, it has come to become the story, to embody the flame, to walk the path from mind to spirit until there is no longer any you, left only the living, breathing presence of the infinite shining through every glance, every breath, every silent thought surrendered to God. For what Jesus received from the rishis and sages of India was not a system or a ceremony, but a vibration, the vibration of divine stillness, of breathless inner communion, of the realization that I and my Father are one is not a claim reserved for the Messiah, but a destiny written into the spiritual DNA of every soul. And you, my beloved, are no exception. That Christ's light dwells in you now, sleeping perhaps beneath the noise of daily striving, but stirring with every breath you take in reverence, with every moment you turn inward, with every prayer whispered not to a distant sky, but to the boundless kingdom within. That kingdom is real. That silence is alive. And that Christ unconfined by form, undivided by culture, unlimited by dogma waits you in the stillness between two thoughts, in the breath between two moments, in the gaze between two worlds. So I ask you now not merely to believe this truth, but to prove it. For faith without direct perception is the beginning, not the end. Jesus did not say, worship me, but follow me. Follow him not in robes and rituals, but in meditation, in renunciation of ego, in surrender of fear, in ceaseless communion with God, until you too can say, not with pride, but with humility, not I, but Christ within me lives. And when that realization floods your being not as an idea, but as a presence, then you will see what he saw. You will feel what he felt. You will heal, not because of your will, but because God's love has no choice but to overflow through one who has become a channel pure and open. This is the second coming, not a prophet riding clouds, but the awakening of Christ, consciousness in your spine, your breath, your innermost awareness where God alone lives and nothing else can survive. So meditate, breathe with devotion, chant AUM with love, bow to no one but the God within all. See in Jesus not a theological figure, but the reflection of your future self. See in Krishna not a foreign deity, but your eternal friend. And in that sacred fusion, let the east and west dissolve in you like two wings returning to the one bird, like two names uttered in the same cry of the heart, like two rivers meeting in the ocean of divine bliss. You were not born to worship divided truth. You were born to become one with it. You were not born to be a child of tradition. You were born to be a child of light. And so, as this message closes, let your inner journey begin, not by effort, but by surrender, not by force, but by stillness, not by seeking outward, but by turning inward where the breath slows, the thoughts fall silent, and the whisper of God becomes the only sound your soul remembers. May the lost light now be found in you. May the Christ of Galilee and the Krishna of India rise as one sun in the sky of your soul, and may you never again look outward for what already shines within. AUM. Peace. Amen.